pull your gun out on my husband, please.
Okay, do you need EMS?
I just need an ambulance.
Let me see your hands.
Brandon,
No, pull it up. You know.
shit!
Let's go. Let's go.
32 Baker, he's got a knife. Hey, Brandon, look at me. Stop. Hey, Brandon, move. Stop. Don't. Don't.
When the subject stepped away from the vehicle, he began challenging a uniformed officer who was directly in front of him by taking an aggressive stance and yelling, "Let's go." The female officer who was behind the subject observed him holding an object in his right hand that she believed to be a knife. The officer described observing the subject moving the object back and forth from his back area to his front, holding it in a threatening manner. The subject began moving in the direction of the male officer who was in front of him. This officer presented his taser and began moving backwards away from the subject while attempting to de-escalate the male by calling his name and speaking calmly with him. The subject then turned his attention to the female uniformed officer, who had repositioned herself behind a vehicle on the south curb line. As the subject began moving towards the female on the sidewalk, the male officer discharged his taser device. The male disregarded multiple commands to stop. He ran around a vehicle to the south side of the street and aggressively approached the female officer on the sidewalk, quickly closing the distance with her as she backed away. When he was within several feet of the officer explained that she feared she would be stabbed and potentially overtaken by the subject. She discharged 2 rounds from her duty firearm. The subject fell to the ground and dropped the object from his right hand. The officers immediately called for an ambulance and began rendering aid. Both officers, including one who had prior training as a paramedic, began life-saving efforts, including the application of a chest seal, multiple tourniquets, and the administration of chest compressions until Denver Fire and Denver Health paramedics arrived at the scene. The subject was transported to the hospital, and despite resuscitative efforts, he was pronounced deceased.
So in our training, when we have less lethal deployed, regardless of how many officers are on scene that have less lethal options deployed, we have to have one officer that has a lethal weapon deployed in case those less lethal options are not effective. And certainly in this situation, there are only 2 officers on scene at the time of force, and so it would have been appropriate for her to have her duty weapon out while the other officer was deploying the less lethal option of the taser. And as you can see, there just wasn't an opportunity to transition to a taser.